do to contribute to these societal issues, and specifically around the criminal justice system. My cousin, who I lost, was a formerly incarcerated Black man, and I had minimized his experience and story prior to his loss. I hadn't really thought much about it as his loved one, and I deeply regretted that. So that summer, I learned about Faith in Texas because were doing some work at my church, Concord Church in Dallas, and I started off as a donor to the organization, a very small donor. I think I was given maybe $50 every pay period, and then ultimately I learned about the job opportunity. And so since being with the organization now for 4 years, and then ultimately becoming the executive director the last 2 years, I have been deeply committed to really lifting up the stories of those who are formerly incarcerated and currently incarcerated, and the impact that the jail and prison and court systems have on them. And so for me, working directly with organizers who are calling out the need to decarcerate these systems, to get people home who are simply locked up because they can't afford to pay bail, who are facing increased potential for the COVID-19 spread as they are locked up. They're not able to safely social distance and take, the proper hygienic protocols, as we are as free people here at home. I really just, am grateful for the opportunity to keep telling this story, speaking up on behalf of the families who may not even realize that there are options. Them not, helping them to, train and develop, hundreds of people to understand that these systems are intentionally built to keep us in poverty, to keep us locked up. To keep them, certain people being able to build wealth on the backs of Black and brown bodies. And so that is a space of which I'm very passionate about, as well as the intentionality because of my experience in philanthropy and fundraising and helping to make a call to action to provide more resources to support many of the grassroots efforts that are predominantly led by Black and brown people that often don't get the same level of funding and resources so they can carry out their work on the ground, because they are working for and have brought about real policy change that does directly impact many of our communities, as well as, so for me, it's about impacting the ecosystem. If Faith in Texas is getting resources and funding, I'm also going to make sure that other organizations that I know about as well. When we launched our bail fund in May of 2019, a few weeks before the unfortunate death of George Floyd and then the response of the local protests, we had our bail fund and we were the beneficiaries of thousands of individuals locally and nationally who wanted to support bailout efforts. But what I made sure to do was to link our bail fund to a bail fund that was serving Tarrant County, because I wanted to make sure that people, knew that here's another resource, as well as I wanted to make sure that particular organization was able to benefit financially as well. So for me, I think of the ecosystem and how we can begin to elevate the need for investments as well as support of grassroots organizing and advocacy efforts, as well as I want to just touch on, the way of which I'm using my voice in the philanthropy space. With the founding of Heritage Giving Fund, the Black Women's Giving Circle at Texas Women's Foundation, we were intentionally wanting to address the issues around we'll say, the discrepancies in the amount of funding that many smaller nonprofits that are led by Black women in certain communities were facing. And so we intentionally wanted to raise money to help begin to see some of their projects and their nonprofit work, to help also create a leverage for them to be introduced to other funding resources, for them to have the reputation of Heritage behind them, to be able to say, hey, if they receive funding from them, then they've already been vetted and confirmed as being reputable and trustworthy, and that they're doing quality work. So yes, others need to follow suit and invest in these Black women, their leadership, their voices, as well as to ensure that their needs were going to be met, so that the people who were beneficiaries of their services and intentionally envision that they would be beneficiaries as well.
And that's why I was so honored when you came to me, with this idea about heritage. And, I'm blessed to be one of the co-founders and grants chair, and to see how it's just Black women putting their money in, not anybody is like, super rich, but to see women of all different classes and backgrounds and ages who are committed to pooling their funds to make sure that these organizations are supported has been beautiful, because data has shown, 0.6% of all funding nationally goes to organizations that are led by Black women in this country. And so there is a huge discrepancy around funding and these organizations that are on the ground that are doing work that a lot of folks aren't in those communities that are doing and need to be lifted up and supported. And so I just applaud the work that you are doing to continue keeping, these folks that are often unseen but are doing the work, that you're putting their stories out there and advocating on behalf of them in your work, whether it's in Faith in Texas or whether it is through Heritage Giving Fund. I just applaud you for all that you're doing. So for me, what I want to know is, I see what you're doing. I've been a fan, I'm Team Akilah, and I just appreciate what you're doing. How do you, in the midst of doing this work where you're making sure that, people that have been impacted by incarceration, that Black women are not only their organizations being lifted up, but you're mentoring people in the midst of this, and you're doing all these things. You're raising a son, and you've got a son in college. How are you able to take care of yourself? So what does self-care look like for you? And moving forward in 2021, how will you do this? What are some tips that you can give the audience as they are finding their voices and they're advocating? How do they balance self-care in the midst of all of that?
Wow, Francois, well, first, thank you for your really kind words. And again, I thank you for joining me as a co-founder of Heritage Giving Fund, you along with Dr. Halima Leach Francis. It's meant the world to me in my personal and professional growth and development. So thank you, as well as, us coming together collectively to impact the community. So this question around care, self-care, right? It's like this loaded question. Is everyone's talking about it. It's like leading it. You got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. And it's been a struggle. It's really been a struggle. I have the responsibility of managing and maintaining my home. I'm still a single mother or unmarried. I have my 2 sons, and maintain, our household and, all of the primary expenses and, just the day-to-day management. But then also serving as the executive director of Faith in Texas, and responsible for ensuring that the needs are met for this dynamic team of 12 people who are doing amazing work and who are absolutely needed in this movement, and ensuring that they are cared for and have everything that they need to continue to push forward in this much needed kind of racial war that we're facing, racial, political, all of the social justice war that we're directly facing. And then on top of that, continuing to try to lead in the philanthropic conversations and ensuring that the women and members of Heritage Giving Fund, that their needs are being met and that they have a wonderful organization to continue to invest in. So I name all that to really just layer it up in the ways of which, like, day to day, there's a heavy burden that I carry, as many people do, right? I don't want to make it seem like oh my gosh, your struggle is so hard, because I recognize there's so many people who are facing so much more. I mean, we're in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic. We have people who are facing potential evictions here in the coming weeks and months. We have people who have faced significant loss, literally lives lost, the loss of jobs, the loss of ideas, the loss of plans, and so on. For me, how I've been able to center self-care is just very minimal, just taking it day by day. Some days I take naps. I just have to find the time to just check out from the work and just take a nap. I may not even go all the way to sleep, but just to lay down and just tell my body and my mind it's okay to just rest for a moment before maybe I have to, return to a meeting or return to somebody at work that I need to complete, a deadline that needs to be met, or just even getting up to make sure that my son has dinner for the evening as we're both, I'm working from home, he's schooling from home. There's also, I know it's a pandemic, there's a lot of restrictions and the goal, yes, stay home, be safe. But I'll be honest, I had to take a trip. I had to just get away. I literally, on November, was it 4th? Was that the day after the election? So whichever, I can't remember the exact date, November 3rd or 4th. I was on a plane following the presidential election this fall. We have been going hard on, GOTV efforts or get out the vote efforts, and deeply, on election day, I went to probably like 5 different polling locations to ensure there were no incidents of intimidation and just to cheer on and support the volunteers that were there. It was a hard election season for so many people. Me and my son, we flew out and we went to, Puerto Rico. We stayed with a work colleague. We were safe. We only went to like beaches. We weren't near people, but I just needed that reprieve to be near water. Water calms me. I'm a water sign. I ended up learning that. Just to be near water, just to be in the presence of just the beauty of what God has created, but also checking out from technology, not paying attention to emails or what was going on in social media. I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on post-election per se, and just the continuation of like, who's our president? I checked away from all of that because I knew I needed it because this year had been hard. And I just didn't want to be on the brink of a breakdown. And I wanted to be strong and continue to be here for my children. So I traveled, I took a break. So for those who can, do that, if you can just do a staycation, find a hotel that, has wonderful safety, protocols and the way they're keeping everything clean. You can distance yourself. If you just need to check out and just make time and space for yourself, I suggest that people do that for themselves in any way that you can. And then also, I lean into my faith. Working for a faith-based organization, and we're in multi-faith, so it's people of a variety of faith traditions. Being able to work in this space gives me the luxury of constantly being in relationship with clergy of different faiths, with people, lay people of different faiths. Our meetings often start with faith reflection. We start them with a moment to reflect in either someone's holy text or, just a poem or a song, or just someone shared, their story that they want to just bring into the space for inspiration, for encouragement, motivation around why we do what we do. That has been very helpful for me and care for myself, that often I'm just reminded that this is why you're here. God has a purpose for you that is greater than what I could possibly imagine. And so that for me is a part of the self-care, and just being in community with those who can pour into me often, as well as the ways in which I read, faith-based messaging, listen to songs, scriptures, and the like. That just keeps reminding me to keep pushing, but also to lean into that I don't have to hold all of it, mentally, emotionally, physically, or spiritually, that I can rely on a resource greater than myself to carry some of this as well.
Well, Akilah, I want to say thank you for being on the show and imparting such wisdom to the audience, that it is okay to step back, to breathe, and to take in the beauty that is around us and expect greatness when we do that. And so I just want to thank you for being on the show. This is another episode of The Tapestry. I am Dr. Francois Booker Drew. You can reach me at info@drfrancois.com or check out my website, drfrancois.com. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.